Just been kind of sitting here, and something's just kind of came over me, and I wanted to share it. So I've got this feeling that somebody needs to hear it. Too many times we have a dream and we let it go because it either doesn't happen fast enough, it doesn't happen in the time frame that we want it. We're afraid, so we give up. And then when we're 80 and we're sitting in our rocking chair, we realize that giving up was the worst decision that we could have made. And I'm hoping that this is for someone out there. I really feel that it is, that maybe you've been at something for a year or 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, and you're sitting there and you're thinking maybe it just wasn't meant for you. I can use myself as the best example. I've been a children's book writer for 13 and a half years. For 12 of those years, I didn't do much of anything except sit around with a dream. But something that was really important that a friend of mine told me many years ago. He's a well-respected comic book artist now. He's met a ton of people in Hollywood. He's very successful. But before he struck his success, I was over at his house one day and he said, if you ever want to do anything, you must be so dedicated that you're willing to spend 10 years doing what you love before anybody even knows who you are. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, 10 years, a decade. God, really 10 years? Because back then I was in the same boat like a lot of people. I wanted it then. I wanted, the next year or two. And a lot of people may look at me now and see that my success as a writer is starting to take off. But a lot of people don't see underneath the surface to see all the times that I spent in private. I spent over 12 years privately, sometimes going through not very good situations to get to where I'm at and where I'm going. And if you're sitting there and you've been at this for a while, the one thing I will say, if you're at this 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years, man, you've come too far to quit. You've invested too much. And something I'll ask, are you living this day as the person that you have in your mind? You can say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. Are you living in your head as you're an entrepreneur? Or are you putting things in front of you saying, well, I'll feel this good when this happens? Well, I'll pat myself on the back when this happens. And you keep putting things out there farther and farther away, and you never make it to these things. I wake up every day as an author, as a writer. I wake up every day as a guy who goes to elementary schools across the country reading to elementary students. And this office this office is in a 500 square foot house. It's mine, but I could literally take 5 steps and walk across it. I don't have a new car. In fact, the farther I get away, the more I'm worried that the car may not make it this far, but I keep going. If somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? Do you say, well, I work at the fast food joint on the corner, but I'm also a struggling actor? Don't do that. Be your passion first. The other job is just getting you by until you make that a reality. But the one thing I want to tell you is that when you, in your mind, believe at 100% you can do it, put yourself there mentally, and then it's just a matter of mechanics will catch you up physically. For 12 years, I didn't sell but maybe 200 books, but I didn't quit. I didn't want to quit. What I did was I got more determined, reading good books, listening to motivational speeches, listening to people at seminars, and started really absorbing it. And I realized when people would come up to me, they'd say, well, what do you do? Back then, I'd say, well, I work at a lumber yard. I'm a delivery guy, but I'm also a writer. Man, automatically I was putting myself down. Whatever you want to do, put that first. People say now, what do you do? I say, I'm an author. Then they say, well, didn't they see me at the high school cleaning the other night? And I say, well, I'm also a evening custodian at a high school because I won't always be that. See, life, I believe, life needs successful as much as it needs unsuccessful individuals to keep the balance of life. That's life's embedded coding. It's genetic makeup of life. But life isn't going to come out and just tell you that it also needs successful people. You have to earn that. It's much easier to stay at the bottom. You ever notice how when you're not drinking a glass of tea for a long time, how everything tends to settle? It's easier to settle than it is to stay suspended. And the cruel thing about life is if you're out there and you're wanting to do something and you've been at it for, let's say, 5 years, and you're thinking, gosh, it's just not working out like I'd hoped, and there's so much struggle, that is the pain that you're going to go through to get that reward. But see, life isn't going to tell you there's a reward on the other side. Life has the right to keep that a secret. But there is also another secret that life holds from you, and it's very important that you understand this. Life has every right, and it does in its own ability, everything it can to hold you back. There's just one thing life cannot do. Life cannot stop you from doing what you want to do. It can slow you down, but it has no power to physically stop you. So that's why life, you have these days where you see people that say, man, this is all that there'll ever be. Every day is the same. Because life knows that it's got you down and it's throwing the same thing at you every day, literally like you're thinking, because you're not pushing back against it. But when you make the choice, let's say 5 years into something you want to do, and you stand up and you start pushing, it's going to be even harder because you're going to use muscles, you're going to use mental stamina that you've never used before, or at least not for a long time. And when you push back against that, it's going to hurt. Testify right here, and it hurts. And you're going to get knocked down. You get back up, and eventually, what will happen? You'll notice a day will come along, and it doesn't look quite the same. Maybe something good happens. That's because you pushed back. For 12 years, I didn't do hardly any pushing. I was afraid. I started pushing back, and I've had more success in the first 5 months of this year than I had in almost 12 years prior. There's nights I've been wore out. There's nights I've passed out from exhaustion. There's nights I've been up till 2:30 in the morning. There's mornings I've gotten up at 4:30 to get something done. That's what people see. So people say, oh man, you're just becoming so successful. It wasn't overnight, and yours isn't going to be either. And that's part of the joy of when you get to the goal at the end. You've earned it. Nobody's handed it to you. So before I get ready to head back here to finish my second part of the shift, I just want you to know that if you're years into this, you've come too far to quit. And I mean, if I'd have quit 3 years ago, I wouldn't have the success that I'm having now. I don't have an agent. My book isn't traditionally published. Um, you know, I don't have a book in every Barnes and Noble in America, but I've sold 1,000 copies this year, and that's from right here. Nobody forced me to do it. I raised myself up out of the ash, and I've started fighting. And I've been at this for 13 years. If somebody would have told me when I first started that it was going to take 13 years, see, my buddy said 10, but in a way, he was right. I get large news stations checking on me. I'm in magazines, I'm in newspapers. Just had a book signing last month where I sold over 75 books in an hour. My first book signing, I sold one. It's at the end. It's there. And it's waiting on us to get there. So I'm going to head back, but I just wanted to say that because I want you to know, even if I don't know you, don't give up. Keep going. You may be a year from it. You may be 4 years from it. But I promise you, if you knew 100% in your mind that it was there at the end of this struggle, you wouldn't quit. Stand up to life and show it what you got, because then life will definitely bow down to you. It won't be easy. Life won't quit, but you'll definitely be stronger. So, see ya.